This is the Redmi Note 9, this is the Redmi Note 9 Pro, and this is the Redmi Note 9S. Wait, I'm not sure which phone I'm holding. Okay, so this is the Redmi Note 9S and this is the Redmi Note 9 Pro. These phones are too much similar that it's really difficult to tell these phones apart.
There is one thing that I don't like about Redmi, that is how the company names its smartphones. At first, the company releases so many variants of one same smartphone and then it names it differently for each region. It all makes picking the right version a whole lot difficult. The same has happened for the Redmi Note 9 series too, and in this video, we will clear out all these confusions. Let's talk about the very first differences between all these three phones. Redmi Note 9 is built out of plastic. It has the Gorilla Glass 5 on the front only. The remaining phone feels very cheap in its plastic build. Redmi Note 9S and 9 Pro are built out of glass. Both phones have the Gorilla Glass 5 protection on the front and at the back as well. The second big difference between these phones is of the charger. Redmi Note 9 and Note 9S come with an 18-watt fast charger. The 9 Pro comes with a 30-watt fast charger. The chargers also differ when it comes to the weight. For example, the Redmi Note 9 Pro's 30-watt charging brick is the heaviest one with over 80 grams, while the 18-watt chargers of the Note 9 and 9S weigh at about 63 grams only. All these three phones also have a different weight. The Redmi Note 9 being a plastic phone weighs at about 201 grams. Redmi Note 9S weighs at about 211 grams, which is close to Redmi Note 8 Pro. And the Redmi Note 9 Pro, being the heaviest one among all, weighs at about 213 grams. The Redmi Note 9 has its fingerprint scanner underneath the camera cutout and its LED flash is towards the top right side of the camera module. Other two models have their fingerprint scanner embedded right inside the power button. When we look at these phones from the front, the 9S and the 9 Pro are almost identical, while the Redmi Note 9 differentiates because of its dot drop placement. The Redmi Note 9 has a camera cutout towards the top left corner of the screen. This phone is using a 6.53 inches IPS LCD panel which produces a brightness of 450 nits, but it does not offer HDR. Both the Redmi Note 9S and 9 Pro have a 6.67 inches IPS LCD panel with the camera placed right in the middle. Now this screen on these phones comes with HDR support, while the brightness on this display is also up to 450 nits. Now that we are talking about the camera cutout and the display, let's talk about the front camera as well. Redmi Note 9 has a 13 megapixels shooter on the front, while the Note 9S and 9 Pro have a 16 megapixels camera on the front. When it comes to the rear cameras, all three phones differ. The Redmi Note 9 has a 48 megapixels main camera. I suspect this to be a Samsung GM2 sensor, but I am not sure about this. This phone further has an 8 megapixels ultra wide, a 2 megapixels depth and a 2 megapixels macro camera. The Redmi Note 9S has the same 48 megapixels main camera, but this phone has a better 5 megapixels macro and 5 megapixels depth camera. The Redmi Note 9 Pro is superior when it comes to the cameras. This handset has main 64 megapixels Samsung GW1 sensor, an 8 megapixels ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixels depth camera and a 5 megapixels macro camera. Now the camera features also vary among all these phones. For example, the Redmi Note 9 cannot shoot super slow-mo videos. The Redmi Note 9 does not offer 1080p at 60 frames per second or 4K at 30 frames per second. On the other hand, the Redmi Note 9S and the Note 9 Pro can shoot super slow-mo at 960 frames per second, 240 frames per second and 120 frames per second. Both these phones shoot 4K at 30 frames per second and they can also shoot 1080p at 60 frames per second. Now all three phones do not have optical image stabilization. However, these phones do support the electronic image stabilization. While the Redmi Note 9 runs on the MediaTek Helio G85 CPU coupled with a RAM of 4GB, the Redmi Note 9S and 9 Pro are powered by Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G, which is coupled with a RAM of 6GB. All phones are available in 128GB internal storage variant. The Redmi Note 9s and 9 Pro have the UFS 2.1 storage chip, and it's not the same on the Redmi Note 9. All phones run on the Android 10 with the MIUI 11 out of the box. The color options also vary for each phone. For instance, the Redmi Note 9 comes in forest green, midnight grey, polar white, while the Redmi Note 9s is available in the glacier white, aurora blue and interstellar grey colors. The Redmi Note 9 Pro is being offered in the tropical green, glacier white and interstellar grey colors. Now the Redmi Note 9 Pro in the tropical green color has a slightly different design. I am not sure if that is a design flaw or Redmi has done that intentionally because the design of the tropical green Redmi Note 9 Pro does not match the picture on the box. For example, the Redmi Note 9 Pro that you are looking at right now has the 64 megapixels mentioned right underneath its camera, while this entire 64 megapixels black bar is missing on the tropical green Redmi Note 9 Pro. Also, the tropical green Redmi Note 9 Pro has a dual tone color at its back. It's particularly happening with the tropical green variant of the Redmi Note 9 Pro only. Glacier white and the interstellar grey are similar to what you are looking at right now. The price difference between these phones is minor and so are the differences. All phones in my opinion are a great value for money. You will actually not regret picking any one of these. There is another variant of this phone which is not being offered in so many regions. That is the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max. But just in case you are still confused, the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max is the upper end variant of this series, and that phone is powered by the Qualcomm Snapdragon 730G chipset. So that is a lot more different from the phones that you are looking at right now. I hope everything is clear as crystal now. If you are still having any further confusions, drop your question in the comment section down below. Also make sure to drop your feedback below as well. Subscribe and like this video if you found it useful. With that said, I will sign off and see you in the next one.